This video is about the two theme templates that can be used to ultimately control the layout and content of individual posts or of individual pages. And they are single.php for posts and page.php for WordPress pages. Now, I say ultimately control layout and content because they're really the last files that WordPress will look for in the case of individual posts or pages before reverting to index.php, all part, as you know, of the template hierarchy. And here's a representation of both of those in the file. So they're kind of like the last leg before you would hit index.php. Now, as you can see in the case of single posts, there's very little going on in the template hierarchy. I mean, really, the system just checks to see if there's a single dash custom post type.php. And a custom post type is something we'll get to later, but they're really different types of content that you can now create in WordPress. And let's say there was a post type called book. Well, it would look for single dash book. If it doesn't find it, then it goes to single.php. Now that's pretty much it in the template hierarchy. Now, if that seems a little bit restrictive, remember the template hierarchy is a series of built-in conditionals in WordPress. There's nothing stopping you, as we're going to see shortly, from creating your own conditionals to display single posts in a certain way. But in the hierarchy, this is really all there is for single.php. Let's take a look at a single.php file in our default theme, 2010. And that's it. This is all there is. It says go get the header. It then creates a container for the content. Then it's going to go and get a loop, we'll talk about that in a moment, to display the single post. Then it gets the sidebar, gets the footer, and we're done. Now this loop business, the loop is probably the key process going on in WordPress. It's the thing that's going to find material based on conditions specified, like all posts in a category, or a particular page, or every post with a particular tag. What it's saying here is that there is a file called loop-single.php. Go find it, insert it here, and it's going to process our particular post that we've got. Now here's what loop-single looks like. It's this vast array. This whole blue area is the loop. And the loop is basically going through and finding. Now in this case it's only going to find one item that meets the criteria because it's for a single post. A loop, of course, will work on multiple posts, multiple pages. It does a lot. In this case it's only going to find one entity. Now you could have that loop inside single.php, and here's an example of it. I've just taken that loop and pasted it into the center here. And in fact, WordPress up until recently worked that way, is you would have the loop right in the single or page.php. What has started to happen is we've started separating out the loop a lot more, and there's good advantages to that, including, I mean, this is a fairly simple loop, actually. If you had a very complex loop, including conditionals, so for example, I might say, if this single post happens to be in this category, then please display it a different way. So I could have conditionals upon conditionals upon conditionals. That can get pretty unwieldy in a single file. So it's good, as this is doing in 2010, it's good to separate out the loop itself. And you might even want to share that loop with something else, perhaps. You can only do that if it's separated out. So that's a new trend in the way themes are built. But again, let's say you had a very, very simple site with maybe 10 pages and very few, not a huge number of categories, not a lot of different posts. You could easily just put the loop right into your single.php or page.php. One other point to make about single posts is there is something called post formats, and they kind of work in a way like a template. You may recall back in adding a new post, we had a section here called format. Here it is right here. In this case, there are only two formats being given by this theme, and a theme doesn't have to use post formats. But in this case, it's got two, and I can choose those formats. And what they do is they create some CSS selectors for that particular post, and then You decide what they look like and how to use them. And one of the ways to use them is if we go back over to our single loop here, and what you can do within this loop is you could say, well, if it's this type, then display it a certain way. So you can use the post formats as a kind of conditional in a way, and kind of a way to set a separate template for single posts. So that's one option, again, for putting in conditionals. Let's go back over here, and we're looking now at page.php. Very, very similar, so there's not a huge amount of difference. The only real difference is there are more choices within the template hierarchy, and you can see it'll look first for custom templates, which, as you recall, are over here, default template versus specified templates. So it's going to look for those first, and default template really ultimately is page.php, or it'll look for the name of the page or the ID of the page, and if it doesn't find it, it goes to page.php, which again, if we take a look over here, again is very, very simple, and it looks for loop-page, again separating the loop from the page template. So those are some examples of how single and page templates work, and we're going to be exploring more ways to use them and create those conditionals that we talked about to really make them very, very powerful for displaying individual posts and individual pages.